How's everybody doing today? Nice, I like that. All right, I'm Todd Taylor. I'm the director of Children and Student Ministries here at St. Paul's. And I'm used to talking to other types of people, so this is a little different for me. But I just wanted to know a little bit about who I am. So I'm married. My wife, Raymond, and I have 5 kids. Our kids, we have 3 boys and 2 girls. They range from age 38 down to 15 years old as of yesterday. Our younger daughter had a birthday. Yeah, and she wants her permit. Yeah, it's a big deal. Yeah. But, you know, the prodigal son, I get to break that down for you a little bit today. And kids, right? So I'm assuming this prodigal son is probably a teenager because teenage years are from 13 to 19, right? And so if you figure out my family, I have had a teenager in our homes for 25 years. And 4 to go, okay? So that's quite a while. But you know what? There's all kinds of things you learn, and you got to look at everything as a learning experience. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, right? So, you know, parenting teenage boys isn't always easy. If you have teenage boys, you know, it's not always a cakewalk. You're asking questions like this, like, whose hoodie is this? Because just these extra clothes show up. What happened to all the groceries I just bought? Did you shower today? And then the good one of, what is that smell? I know, y'all been there. You know, in a short time, I went from dada to daddy to dad to can I have $20? You know? And that $20 now isn't even enough. It's always trying to get a little bit more. It's kind of crazy, you know. But a few weeks ago, well, it's probably been a month ago, my youngest daughter, Emma, I was talking to her, and we were talking about screen time and keeping your room clean and all of those things, and she wasn't really listening. And then she had the gall to say to me, "You're being overdramatic, Dad." So it hit me. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the Wi-Fi password and then see who's dramatic. I'm not sure if she's in here, but yeah, there you go. Up, she's here. So our 38-year-old son, Ryan, 16 years old, you know how that is. They get a lot more freedom. They have their license. Everything's good. And I remember standing downstairs in the basement in front of Ryan's room talking to him about his curfew. You know, he thinks he's adult. He thinks he can stay out as long as he wants. And as we're talking, it gets a little heated. And he decides that he's going to be over dramatic, and he walks into his bedroom, takes the door, and he's going to slam it for effect. But there was a towel hanging on the doorknob. No noise, no dignity for him, right? I remember walking back up the stairs laughing. It's kind of just what I needed. But I saw something the other day that popped up. It probably knew that I was going to be giving this message. It said something that raising a teenager is like having a cat that only comes out to eat and hisses at you when you try to pet it. Sums it up, right? But to be honest with you, I really honestly enjoy all the stages of kids. I think that's why God blessed us with 5 of them, because you know what? They're all different, they're all unique, and sometimes those days are tough. But it's things that we got to do because they're growing also. Just like all of us, we're all still children of God. So today we're going to try to break this down a little bit, but I have a question for you, okay? How many of you own an elephant? How many of you know anybody who owns an elephant? Nope, me either. Okay? So it's kind of one of those things that I want to share with you because in this parable, we're going to be talking about this big thing that we're going to try to break down. But this parable is kind of exciting because it's one of the longest parables that Jesus spoke, but it only shows up one time in the Gospel of Luke. Okay? One time. And I think it's important because that one time makes it just a little bit more, the crown of parables, the flower, if you may. The flower of parables, the one that people talk about the most because there's so much in it. But when we read this parable, we think it's really just about the father who forgives his wayward son, correct? But there's more to it, and so today I'm going to try to break that down. So what is a prodigal? What is a prodigal? It means wastefully extravagant. Okay? And in this story, the son, recklessly goes out and blows all of the father's inheritance. But as you read and you discover that the story relates to a lot of us. And so over the years and things, it's became, the person who's a sinner, the person who's spiritually lost, the person who has returned to his family after a long absence. It shows the delight of someone that turns their life back from what was not good for them towards God again. But there's dimensions of this story that I think we have to really think about, because the older brother also makes a valid point. And he ends the story with where he's very, very upset about the fairness, that he was the good son, but yet this party is for the younger son. Parables have been used not just with Jesus, but for people telling stories, because a parable is set up so that it's not if they're true or not, but it's just to help us think and wonder, scratch our heads a little bit to think about what are we trying to do? What's the deeper meaning in this parable? So maybe you've gotten off the path a little bit. Maybe you got caught up in something, maybe an attitude or a behavior that just isn't healthy. I've been there. So I think we got to put ourselves in this place so that when you hear this story, it's not Jesus just talking to the religious leaders. He's really talking to all of us, because honestly, we're all prodigals. We've all had those times in our lives because it's just what it is. It's life. It's what we do. Recently, a friend of mine said that he hadn't been to church for so long. Ever since COVID, of course, he just decided that, he wasn't coming to church, didn't even start watching it online, just kind of moved away from that part in his life. And when he would see me, he'd say, I need to get back to church. You're making me feel guilty. Well, I'm not trying to make you feel guilty, and it's not about that. It's about where are you right now? What's your next step? And he laughed, and he said, what, if I walked through the doors and came back into church right now, I'm sure a lightning bolt would hit me. But I just kind of laughed, and I thought that, God would probably be throwing him a party instead of a lightning bolt. But we think that that's what it's all about, that we've gone too far this way, that we just can't come back. But that's why Jesus shares this story with us. We have to be reminded that it's not about our past, but it's what's in front of us right now that matters. So think about that. It's not about our past. It's about what's in front of us right now, today. So back to the elephant question. So nobody in here owns an elephant or knows anybody that owns an elephant. But I just want to tell you a little bit. When I was growing up on a farm, I have a twin brother, and we had all kinds of pets. We had the rats, the snakes, the little ducklings, the turtles, the salamanders, pigs, and chickens. We weren't allowed to have cows as pets because my dad said the Holstein cows are for milking, not pets, because they're a livelihood. But when you're raised on a farm, there's the county fair, and what comes along with the county fair is 4-H. Now, 4-H is where you prep this animal all year long, and you're going to take these animals to the fair. You're going to show them how well-groomed they are and how well-trained they are, so that maybe you'll get a purple ribbon to say that your animal is the champion. That's the goal. So my twin brother and I just told you we couldn't take cows, but we took pigs and chickens. Wow, right? That's exciting. So we'd get them all ready. We'd go to the 4-H county fair, and we'd have them all there. And then our neighbors and some of the people would show up with their black Angus cows, all shiny and groomed, leading them all over the place, the Jerseys and the Holstein cows. And they would make fun of our pigs and chickens. I don't get it, but that's what happened. So as a kid, you want to dream, and sometimes you do things that you really don't plan on doing, okay? So there they were, big judgment day, everybody gets their ribbons, and there were a few blue, a few green, and pinks. There was all kinds of colors, and it all was ranked. Well, a couple of our friends got the championship purple ribbons and rubbed it in our face as they looked down upon our pigs and our chickens. So I opened my mouth, and this is what came out of my mouth. Well, we have a pet elephant at home. It came out because my twin brother and I would dream about having a pet elephant. Every time we'd see a show on television or watch Dumbo, we thought it'd be cool to have a pet elephant. So the boys kept going on, oh, you do not. And I said, well, you bring your Black Angus here next year and you'll see how my elephant will sit on your Black Angus, okay? I said Black Angus, right? Okay. So anyway, we wanted them to know that we meant business, and it wasn't fair that they did that, but it was soon discovered that we didn't have an elephant. But to dream, right? So when I was older, I learned a little bit more about elephants. In Asia, some of the farmers still to this day use elephants to pull out stumps and take down trees. And it's not just because they're, they're enormous, it's because they're very strong also. Very, very strong. And in some parts of Asia, they have this game called tug of war, which is between an elephant and 100 men. Okay, 100 men, and they're going to do this tug of war. So the elephant's here, and they take this rope that's between you, and the men are all ready to stand up. So let's say there's 100 men, and let's say the average weight is 150 times 100. That's over 7 tons, right? Now, the men aren't just standing there. They're digging their heels in. They're also pulling because they want to beat this elephant. But no matter what, that elephant wins every single time. They've never won. Never won. So that information about how strong an elephant is kind of made me change my mind on what it would be like if I owned an elephant. What if in the middle of the night, my elephant wanted to get up and see Dumbo at the circus? There'd be no holding him back, right? There wouldn't be. But later I learned that in Asia, they have control of their elephants. They basically take a rope, much like this, and they tie it around the elephant's right hind leg. And then they put a post in the ground and they tie the other end to it. And so the elephant will just stand there and not move. But we all know that the elephant would just have to take his foot, he would just have to pull, and that post would come flying, the rope would break, and everything would be in turmoil. But the elephant just stands there. He's held back by nothing more than a small rope, left almost powerless by a lie. The elephant thinks he can't move, not one step further. Failure is part of learning, okay? Failure is part of learning. We should never give up the struggle in life, ever. But so often, so many of us just want to give up when things get so bad. But there's this quote I came across, and it says unknown who did it, but it says, don't focus on the whole staircase, just look at the stair in front of you. You'll notice on this picture on the screens, there's this little boy, and he's standing in front of the stairs, and he's looking down at one step. If this little guy looked up there, he'd be like, what? There's no way. He would probably just give up. But he focused on that one step, and then when he takes that one step, he can go to the next, and then the next. It's a process, right? It's definitely a process. So now let's go into the parable. Are you ready for that? Okay, so listen up. The parable of the prodigal son is of this younger son who goes to his father and he says, you know what, Dad? I want my inheritance now. Now, how this works is the son asks for it. He shouldn't have, because the inheritance doesn't come until the father has passed away. When the parents are gone is when the inheritance is distributed. But the son went ahead and asked anyway. And I don't know why the son did it. Maybe he thought his dad was blowing his inheritance. I'm not sure. But it doesn't really say. But the kid said, give it to me. I want to enjoy it while I'm young. But dividing up the farm is no small deal, because the inheritance goes to the oldest son and then the next. And so the older son would get two portions of it, and the younger son would get one. Okay? But the son wanted it. It would be a great shame in that culture for a son to ask for his inheritance from his dad early, Because basically, it's so insulting because the son is saying to the dad, "You're dead to me. You're dead to me." My gosh, who does that? But the father, he could have stopped him. He was under no obligation to give his son the inheritance. But he does it anyway. He does not try to control or manipulate. This is where free will is an example in all of our lives. We can make these choices. He's letting the son make it. Now the son could have heard all this. The dad could have said to him, "You're just going to blow it. This land has been in our family for 1,800 years. Generations of men and women have worked and sweat and bled on this farm. They have endured years of droughts and floods and all of these things that just make it so hard to do, and they sometimes have a poor harvest. But God brought them through it. And now you're going to blow it on things that are not of God? If you do, I just want you to know that you are never allowed to come back forever." Now, these things are true with this family farm. But there was none of that. The father was going to let the kid go and make his own mistakes. Just as God has given us the freedom to make bad choices, it's important to remember that we can't blame God for those choices that we make. Sometimes we want to. Sometimes I want to. But it's a gift. We choose to follow that path, which is free will, right? So now let's move into the distant country where the son wanted to go. Now this gets a little bit more here. The son leaves the country and goes to the land of Gentiles. Now remember, Gentiles are non-Jewish, right? So when the community hears that the son asked for his inheritance, got it, and then he's going to the land of Gentiles to do some wild living, you can use your imagination on what that is, and it's probably right. Because he's going to go and he is going to be rejected by his people because they also are his community. So he's not just leaving the father, he's leaving his community also. That's a big deal. But y'all know how the story went. Before long, he blows the money. Now, this is several years, I think, and it takes him a while to blow this money, but then a big drought hits the area. And the son loses all of his money. His wild living is over. He is starving. And now he has to make a plan of what he's going to do next. So, remember, he's Jewish. He went to work for a pig farmer. He was slopping the hogs, some days wishing that he could eat the slop that they were eating because he was so hungry. Now, in Jewish culture, to slop pigs is not a good thing. He has hit rock bottom. But Jesus is telling us he is as low as he is going to go. Jesus said in the scriptures that one day he came to himself. He came to himself. Other translations say when he was clothed in his right mind. Okay? So hitting rock bottom sometimes has a way of clarifying things. Sometimes you got to go so low before you can take that first step to coming out of it. But sometimes we would rather see people suffer with those things that they are in, those things that have taken them to rock bottom, those things that have hurt you and me. Sometimes it's easy for us to say, their own fault. They had it coming. Unfortunately, these parables are not just meant for the religious leaders, they're meant for all of us. Every single one of us, because we've all been prodigals. Maybe today is the day that you're coming to yourself to realize that there is a way up from the bottom. And that's why you're hearing this parable that we've heard many, many times, a lot of us. But what is it really trying to tell you? It never has to get any worse than it is today. And that's where the younger son was. So he concocted a scheme that he would go back to his father's house and that he could actually just be a hired hand there. He knew that his father was taking care of his people. He knew that he was feeding them. giving them a paycheck, he thought, you know what, it'd be better to be a hired hand than to be here slopping the pigs. I'm just going to go home. But it was a very serious matter, okay? Because for a Jewish young man to lose his family's inheritance in a foreign land of Gentiles, that if he came back, the entire community would know about it. The entire community would find out that he lost the inheritance and that he was wandering back to his father. And the community has this tradition in their culture to where if someone comes back who has done that, they have this clay jar. They have this clay jar and they fill it with burnt corn and ashes. And they have it waiting there for these people who come back who have humiliated the community, yet alone their fathers. And they'd fill it up, and they'd see this person coming into the community, and they would pick this jar up, and it's called kazaza. Kazaza. And they would take it, the community backing one person who was holding it, and they would take this clay pot, walk up to this person, and they would smash it in front of them. I talked about breaking it, but I didn't want to hurt anybody, okay? So when that thing would crash and break and all the ashes and corn were laying at the prodigal son's feet, it was basically saying that the community is saying, get out of here, you are dead to me. You are dead to me. The exact same thing that happened when he left the Father. And then the Father does something that men do not do in this culture. The Father runs to his Son. He runs so fast that everybody can see his pale ankles. Runs so that his robe is flurrying between his legs like an apron. They're basically saying that he's running like a girl. Running so that his robes get wedged between his legs. So everybody sees this. My daughter asked me one time if God is more like a mother or a father. And I said, well, God is everything. But what I like about this, the saying is that God knows what we need. He knows what we need at this time, and thank God he is everything to help us understand who he is and what he can do for us. So I love this part of the parable where the Father takes upon himself to take the shame for his Son. So as he's running, just picture it. He has to hike up his tunic so that he doesn't trip. He's showing his bare legs, and in this culture, that is a disgrace for a man to show their legs. It's a disgrace, but he does it. He shows his bare legs because he knows that he has to get to his son before the villagers do. Then he can save his son from being cut off. He can save his relationship with the son and his family's relationship with the community. The reconciliation will cost him his honor. His greatness in others' eyes will probably go away, but he doesn't care. He takes off running. It doesn't matter. His son was coming home, and he went out and he hugged him. He didn't just hug him, he grabbed him and he kissed him. And he said, I'm so glad you're home. The prodigal did not expect this, did not expect it at all. The Father gives him symbols of authority, honors and privileges, gave him the best robe. And then he planned a party. The party was for everybody because he was home. But the older son was out in the field, and when the older son came back, he heard the music, and he was like, what is going on? And they said, your brother is home, and they're throwing a party for him. Well, he was furious. How could they do this? I was here all the time, and the party was going on. The son wasn't mad because the son was forgiven, or was home, but that he was forgiven. He said, I will not go to that party. I will not go to that party. The father heard how mad he was, so the father once again had to leave the party, which again is a disgrace, to go outside to talk to his older son, because again, it's about the relationship. The father goes out and he said, don't you understand? I have always been with you. You have always been here. But your brother was lost, and now he's found. That is why we're having a celebration. We are challenged to be people who open doors, who go out on a limb to help people come back home. It's to be there for people, to notice them, to say, you know what? It's going to be all right. And some of us must be wondering, where's the justice in this story? Don't people need to suffer their consequences? Parents shouldn't enable their kids. The righteous should be rewarded and not taken for granted. The older brother is right to point out the unfairness. But again, the older brother now says, I will not go to the party, and he leaves. Who's the prodigal now? See how it works? He now left the father. He's now in the distant country. So back to the elephant, who was tied up. Within his mind, he had shackles on his mind and a rope holding him back. Why is that? Well, in Asia, when elephants are very young, they're taken away from their mothers, and they're taken and they put shackles around their hind right leg, and they shackle them to a tree. The elephant struggles for days and sometimes weeks, and the only thing he accomplishes is the shackles digging deep into his leg. But then he gives up. One day he just gives up. He goes, I'm not going anywhere. Then the tree is replaced with a post, and the chain and the shackles are replaced with a rope. And the elephant is living a lie. A lie that he can't go anywhere, that he can't do anything. He could easily break free, but he doesn't. Sometimes this happens to us. The community brings us down. People push us away. We don't think we're good enough. So we let that rope just hold us back. But today, I want you to know that the good news is this, is that Jesus tells us this parable to let us all know that when you're struggling, when you feel like there's no way back, that all you have to say is, I need you. And he is there with open arms waiting for you to come home. I know that's easier said than done, but God loves you no matter what. He is there. Jesus was showing the Pharisees that he didn't eat with sinners to celebrate their sin, but to showcase his grace. He invites all of us to come sit at his table. It's big enough. Got big arms. Are you ready to come home? Are you? All right, will you bow your heads with me? Lord, I want to thank you for today as we took this time to just hear your story about the prodigal son. Help us to learn all we can. Help us to be those people who are there for others. Help us to understand where you're coming from, to know that you're always there for us. You're always there for others. Lord, again, I thank you for this time that we can just break down your word. And it's in your most precious name we all say,